People who work in human resources, what is the weirdest shit you have seen? The maintenance guy had been living up above the ceiling of the building. He had built a little cubby living area with electricity and a small fridge and everything. Edit, for years. Hey, that happened at the university where I used to work. Guy had had a nasty divorce and set up a cot in the basement under the structures lab. Dunno how he tolerated that. It was loud from big ass hydraulic pumps running all the time and probably averaged about 35 C. Plus, the ceiling was about 1.5 meters high, the floor was covered in grime and oil, and the place stank. He was gone before I started, but I heard he'd been living there for a few months before getting caught. At the university where I work, they found a homeless woman living in an unused office. Kind of smart, actually. Not now, of course, with universities shut down, but generally universities are safe places, well patrolled, with clean restrooms and students dropping change and abandoning uneaten food. During normal times, there's always a bake sale or hot dog sale going on. Almost every day there's an organization offering free pizza if you go listen to their talk about HPV careers, Jesus, or trends in the energy sector. If you get bored, there are free concerts and talks, and no one will notice you in a crowded lecture hall. Or you can just go read books or magazines in the library. Keep yourself clean and tidy, and you can be homeless a long time at a university. Keep yourself clean and tidy, and you can be homeless a long time at a university. Time for a game of professor or hobo. I'm faculty myself. It's accurate enough. I once had a temp job in our. I was scanning lots of old personnel files, and the one perk of the job was reading old complaints against people. The best one I came across was a mediation caused by one member of staff accusing another of witchcraft. She turned me into a newt. I got better. Guy came into the interview in sweatpants and a hoodie, and said he didn't need the job because of how much money he was making illegally, but he wanted to have a job so the IRS didn't get suspicious. Weirdest part is I don't live in America. I very much doubt the IRS cares about Canadian tax returns. Weirdest part is I don't live in America. I very much doubt the IRS cares about Canadian tax returns. Undocumented immigrant? IRS don't duck around, even with foreign earnings. He didn't have any American addresses or jobs on his resume, but I honestly don't believe a word he told me all interview, so who knows. Years ago I worked hour for a retail store. A manager would always clock out on time, however the alarm wouldn't be set until about 30 to 45 minutes after he clocked out. Since we had a lot of trouble with internal theft, we assumed he was stealing. Loss prevention approved the installation of cameras across all stores, but we were told not to talk about it to see if we could catch any internal theft. The way the ceiling was set up, the cameras weren't too obvious, but if you knew what to look for it was quite noticeable. Anyway, turned out this dude was banging a co-worker who was 16, he was 25, expecting his first child with his wife. I didn't see the footage, but our regional manager of loss prevention did and had to turn it over to the police. The real kicker is the girl's dad was a captain on said police force. Edit, I'm not sure what happened to the guy. Unfortunately I didn't sit in when LP interviewed him. According to my district manager, the authorities were notified, but I'm not sure if he was arrested after the interview was finished. We weren't allowed to discuss what happened, but word got around. This was in Texas and the age of consent is 17, and the female had just turned 16 a few months prior. As for her, she officially resigned, and last I heard she became a nurse. Who was taking the stuff? A few employees who were promptly terminated. The most common thing they all did was put clothes into bags without scanning the item at the POS. Dudes were walking out with expensive jeans and jackets while only paying for a hat. That manager actually didn't steal any items, so I guess he had that going for him. I used to work at a staffing agency that placed people at manufacturing positions. Everyone had to be drug tested at the office as part of the orientation. If the P-cup came back as inconclusive, we'd send the potential hire to a medical lab. They would take another drug test and the lab could determine if the person was on a prescription or using illegal drugs, and therefore, not eligible for hire. So one guy failed his drug test at the lab. He came back to the office claiming that it wasn't his fault. He explained that he was riding in a car and he stuck his head over the window. Then, when the car passed under a bridge, someone threw a bunch of cocaine off the bridge, it hit him in the face, and he accidentally inhaled it. How did you know it was cocaine? By the smell. Exactly the same high. Had to delete someone from the system following them being murdered. Was a bad day. Edit: over the years I've deleted 7 deaths including the murder, 1 pedophile and 1 murderer. I had to do that for a work colleague that died in his sleep. I'd spoken to him less than 2 hours before he died. It's a weird feeling. And a guy who worked the overnight shift, because he was doing support for our Asia-Europe regions, got written up for improper use of company systems. He had dozens if not hundreds of Google image searches related to foot fetish stuff. Like insert celebrity here feed along with other random stuff like cute toes, etc. Like dude, you're in it. You know this stuff is tracked and that your boss could easily monitor it. One of the candidates I was interviewing via Skype answered the phone while in his boxers and a tank top, then stood up to grab his blazer that was probably about 3 feet away. I had to see him in his stretched out boxers too. Had a porn site up and open during a shared screen trial, to see how well he can use the digital classroom. I had to remind him I can see his screen. He goes, oh yeah sorry, next. Instead of just closing it from the corner of his partially hidden window, he clicks open the window in full view then closes it. That was nice, Ada. No, guys, he didn't get the job. Also, I got an award for this. Thank you, random citizen. Digital classroom. Don't tell me he was interviewing for a teaching position. Yeep. Sometimes I wonder how TF I can't get a decent job when people have to deal with this. I was a recruiter, and you would be shocked to see what some people actually have as their personal email. Most people have come around to using just their name, but then every once in a while you'll have to verify that brownglitter69 is in fact how they would like to be contacted. I am a teacher. There are a lot of angry parents who are still using their Hotmail from high school like Studman6969 and SuperSexyKick16, fake. Makes it hard to take them serious. The new receptionist was coming in every morning and opening up programs documents to make it look like they were busy, and they'd sit with one hand on their mouse and one hand on their keyboard and stare blankly at their screen for 8 hours a day and not do anything. They'd also consistently pick up the phone and hang it up without saying anything so that it would stop ringing. I sat in on their termination, and the employee started screaming at the manager about how they were doing an amazing job, and they had to give them another chance. I was 100% confident that they were just trying to get some easy money and wouldn't be surprised that they were finally getting fired. The whole thing was just bizarre. They'd sit with one hand on their mouse and one hand on their keyboard and stare blankly at their screen for 8 hours a day and not do anything. How? You'd think eventually just sheer boredom would compel them to do something. Never underestimate how hard people will work to not work. But to do nothing for hours but staring a blank screen. That's some Zen master monk shit. Call center employee calls hour to complain about their supervisor, has abusive. He won't even let me leave my desk. Supervisor calls hour to complain about employee, can you please tell that she's allowed to leave her desk? Oh my god. She's shitting in her trash can. It may sound humorous, but there were significant mental issues at the heart of this. Imagine if it was a metal wire trash can. Mince poop. The family of the guy who passed away came to speak to us. It was in a factory environment. To get pension docs etc. We sent them away with a to-do list. 1 hour later reception pinged us saying Mr. X's family was here. Strange. The documents take a few days to get. Nope. New family. Yup. The guy had 2 different families. Who were about to have a fun surprise. Well. Because both of them were nominated beneficiaries of his will. We had to call both of them in. Had to highlight the nominations. Then the main squeeze found out about side hustle and it was crazy. Wife took side hustle to court for fraud. She lost. Moral of the story. Don't write your ducking mistress as a retirement fund beneficiary. Just leave her with a Bitcoin account like a normal person. Starts writing notes. One of my relatives worked in tech support for a really high-profile company in Silicon Valley during the height of the dot-com boom. Some guy who desperately wanted to work there was emailing his resume to our 1,000 times every day. Several times a day, the number of emails would get too overwhelming. So the people in our would just select all the emails in the inbox and delete all of them, whether the emails were from the applicant or not. My relative had to show them how to filter emails from the applicant. This was a tech company. Just because it is a high-tech company, doesn't mean everyone is computer savvy. Source: 17 years in the service desk and off-world dealing with situations just like this in Silicon Valley.